Good evening. Let's call the City of Milton Common Council meeting to order at 6 p.m. And can I get confirmation of appropriate meeting notice?
The agenda was posted at Dave's Ace Hardware, Piggly Wiggly, and Milton City Hall.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. We have an agenda. Pledge of Allegiance. We have a couple of individuals signed up for public comments regarding items on the agenda. Do you want to speak at the beginning of the meeting now, or do you prefer to speak when your agenda item comes up? Okay. Wait. Okay, all right. So just, if I don't see you or I'm at your agenda item, just say, excuse me, or something. Stand up. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Okay, approval of Common Council meeting minutes from August 20th, 2019.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any changes or additions or corrections or anything? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries. Okay, public hearing and discussion on resolution 2019-20 regarding curb and gutter assessments for Windsor Court and Front Street reconstruction projects.
So this is a continuation of the public hearing that began 2 weeks ago, and this is in regards to the Front Street and Windsor Court improvements that are currently underway and the associated assessments that go along with the curb and gutter work that will be performed in front of the individual property owners. Those property owners that have been levied an assessment have received notice of that assessment and of the public hearing this evening.
Okay, let's open the public hearing. If you wish to speak on this issue, come to the podium, give us your first and last name and your address. Is there anybody that wants to speak at this public hearing? This is the last chance. Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing, and what that means is that the public hearing is closed, and we're not going to take public comment on this issue after the public hearing is closed. So seeing nobody wishing to speak on this issue, I will close the public hearing. Council? Any questions or comments?
Did we receive any feedback from any of the property owners? Just curious.
No, we haven't received any, for Mr. Samuelson had just talked to us about it, and that was just, whatever we do on the proposed easement is no expense to him. So that was most of the comments that we had heard about the project, or that was actually all the comments we heard, so.
And we held 2 public meetings in advance of the project happening, so those were both well attended. So I'm thinking most of the questions that folks may have had were probably asked during those meetings. So
Then they weren't surprised.
So there could be a motion.
I would move approval of resolution 2019-20.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments on this for anyone? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries. Item number 7, discussion and possible action regarding the acceptance of a bid for pavement work at the Milton Public Library and along Putman Parkway.
So last week, the Public Works Department, along with the city engineer, opened up bids for 2 projects that were part of the 2019 capital improvement program. One of those was to repave the back lot or the northern lot at the library, which is in pretty poor condition. And then the other piece was to add the final lift of asphalt along the new extension of Putman Parkway that was constructed in 2017. Both of those bids were opened and in totality came back under the projected cost, so that's good news. Funding for, funding for the Putman Parkway extension will be provided through TIF, and for the library will be provided through the capital fund that was created as part of the 2019 budget.
I move for approval.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second for approving.
We'd have to name the,
And
Sorry.
we want to make sure we know what's being approved.
yeah.
I'm very sorry.
So it'd be the bid to Rock Road in the amount of $91,980 for the work as outlined.
I'll still second that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Larry.
That's okay.
I know what you want, Larry.
We're good?
Yes.
Okay.
What did we budget for that?
Mark, do you remember what the original?
The estimates for both of them were around 94,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other further questions or comments? All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries. Okay, item number 8, discussion and possible action regarding ordinance 469 regulating semi-trailer parking on public streets. Is there, okay, come on up. First, last name and address, please.
My name's Brenda St. Michael Schmittinger. I live at 372 Woodcrest Lane, right here in Milton. Basically, hello, everyone. I'm here on behalf of my husband. My husband is a truck driver, and we have been now since 2016. We sold our home in Janesville and we moved in with our parents. My mom is ill, so I'm her full-time caregiver and help my dad out as well. My husband and I owned our own business, and we used to deliver camper trailers to all the dealers all over the U.S. So we were on the road 24/7, so we sold our home. And realizing my dad needed help and such, my husband decided to go back to his old employer, which was J.B. Hunt. And he drives semi-trailer and tractor. He's been parking at the end of the street now since 2016. And we actually I came here and talked with Becky Sexy regarding any ordinances or any problems that there may be with city street parking. At that time, she indicated that there shouldn't be a problem and that, if someone has a complaint, then that could be a concern. However, since then, and I read this in the newspaper and I was quite concerned because my husband gets up at 3:30 a.m. in the morning to leave to be dispatched out of Chicago. And so if that were to happen and we actually have this rule and thumb that he can't park there, that means I may have to get up at that morning to take him to his semi, and I can't leave my mom alone. So, with that being said, that poses kind of a family problem. My suggestion or my request is I'd be more than happy to get some type of permit to park there, or because it's not hindering anything because it's on a dead-end street. And we made sure that our neighbors were aware of this when we first moved in, and we've also talked to Quick Trip, Freedom Plastics. We've been everywhere to try and see, even Piggly Wiggly, and everything's an absolute no. So, we're very courteous as far as where and what and how we're going to drive. He never brings the trailer, So as far as the trailer goes, and if you all know that a semi-trailer does weigh about 32,000, excuse me, a truck weighs about 32,000 pounds. When you start to look at all of the other things that are going on here with buses, campers, boats and such, I mean, he's within the 48 hours according to what you have planned for the ordinances. Cause he comes home at like 3:30, oh, excuse me, noon, 1 o'clock maybe on a Thursday, and he leaves at 3:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning. So it's not there for a very long time. It's within that 48 hours. Again, we've not had any problems. I mean, the police have gone and they've questioned us, and we've just clarified that. So my biggest concern is, what's your exception? You know, what can we do to better serve us, and getting permission and how we can go about doing that.
I have a question for you. Just curious, do you, because we at the other possibilities, do you have room maybe in your driveway for the cab? Or would it not fit in your driveway?
No, it would not. It would if we had to. However, my dad has a trailer in the driveway along with the car and along with his truck. And then I have a 3500 Dodge Ram that's parked as well, which is also, a concern as far as weight and whatever not. That's what we use for our business. So if we had to, my dad would probably allow that, but because we're at such an incline, we're concerned about that as well.
Because that was an idea that's come up.
Pardon?
That was kind of an idea that's come up, is what about if we have them park in the driveways and stuff like that?
We've discussed it. We discussed it immediately when we first moved in, how convenient that would be. And then we're like, well, the end of the road is in front of a house and our house, so we can see it 24/7. And I just broke it, sorry. So, that's another concern of my husband's, is just the liability, making sure that the truck is okay. That's his workhorse. So, anywho, I apologize, but again, I'm thankful, and thanks for letting me speak. And I hope you take this into consideration, or maybe discuss with me and my husband regarding this situation.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments.
Thank you for taking them.
Is there anybody else that wants to speak on this issue? No, not this one? Okay. Yes, okay. Sorry, I looked away too quick and almost moved right on.
Hello, my name's Troy Johnson. I live at 350 Rogers Street, right here in Milton. I actually talked to Al on the phone the other day. I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it here. I did be able. Obviously, I made it. I haven't. Just a little brief of what's happened to me in the city of Milton. I briefly went. I don't know if did you discuss that with them at all?
Very little.
Okay.
It'd be in your best interest to kind of describe it, yeah.
Okay. Well, obviously, I'm a small business owner. We have our own authority. I am my own entity. We have been living in the city of Milton for 8 years. We started this business 7 years ago, a year after we moved in. I was basically, I feel that I was ran out of town. We had some neighbors that complained compulsively. Really wasn't doing any harm. I wasn't there for any more than 10 hours, for my 10-hour break, if I was there at all. And then the police kept on asking me to move, and there was one time I came home just to grab my laundry. I left to go down to the shop and grab my truck. I came back, it was snowing. I come out, I was in the house for 15 minutes, and I had a parking ticket for snow ordinance. Plow hadn't even been through. That's when I said I was done. I don't, if Milton didn't want to support my business, I wasn't going to support businesses in Milton. I feel if you pass an ordinance like this, you're going to shut revenue out. My suggestion to Al was to make it a 12-ton weight limit to prevent people from bringing trailers. Because that's the biggest thing I think that are pushing people's patience. Other than that, I'd hate to see anybody else have feelings like I do. I don't think that was the city of Milton's intent, but that was the way that I felt, and I didn't feel welcome. So, other than that, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for coming up and sharing your comments with us. We appreciate that. Anybody else on this? Okay, so we had the first reading of this ordinance, and that's all we have had so far. Any comments or questions?
I'm still concerned that we do have, these are business owners that we're talking about, as has been pointed out. And I know that these are unique situations. I do like, and this of course is only just temporary until we can find something else. But I do like the idea for city residents only to be able to park on Commerce Drive. I'm not looking for a major truck parking area, but in the time that we've been talking about this, we've heard this will be our third company that's approached us about their business, their semis, and where they can and can't go. It was just something that I thought would work temporarily. I don't know if we can still come up with something beyond this. But I just feel like because these are, I feel like we should make the effort at least for our city residents.
And then we could address that by issuing some kind of permit to verify their city residents. If that's the direction we went.
See, I have a question for the chief, actually. If it's just a cab parking on the streets, is that a big visibility issue, or is it just mainly the trailer that's the issue?
It depends on the street, I guess. Sight lines and things are all over the place, just depending on, with a truck at the end of Woodcrest, obviously not too big a concern. But we have had situations where trucks are parking in areas that you don't have that good a sight line. And I'm not familiar with, off the top of my head, what it looks like at 350 Rogers Street, whether that's a concern or not.
What about in regards to versus campers?
It's basically the same issue.
Okay.
It depends.
And so campers and okay, might be worse, might be better in some cases.
Yeah, it just depends. Lots of variables.
And, and we discussed the weight difference between the two.
Yes, but I'm no expert on that, so
Okay.
I couldn't even guess what the weight difference is between a semi tractor and a RV. That's just something I don't know.
I'm sorry if I'm talking out of line.
Come up to the podium.
It's because I used to deliver campers, the Jaycos. Some of the campers go 12,000, some are less. We even pulled one that was 26,000 pounds. And that was the biggest Cigna that we had. So, and needed a semi to actually travel. So some of these trailers and boats are quite heavy. So, it's not like some of these semi drivers are driving up and down these roads. I can see that being a problem for your roads and stuff. The permit idea, we'd be willing to pay a permit to allow us to park there. And I don't think anybody else would object to that as well, especially if we're a city resident. Thank you.
Thank you. We just can't hear you if
Oh,
you're
that's
not up
fine.
there, so thanks.
I might be able to shed some light on as far as the weight, versus cars or tractor trailer or tractors. Tractors without the trailer, I'm talking because I've never brought a trailer home but once with me. And that was when I had a Huff Cord trailer when I delivered the glass wall partitions to the library. They roughly will weigh about 11 to 12 ton, which is, about 22,000 pounds. But you also have to realize that the weight's dispersed by 8 tires. So the dispersal is a little bit different. A car's gonna weigh about 3,000 pounds.
Okay, thanks.
Do we have any idea of how many semi owners we have in the city?
No. Wouldn't really be a way to track that by any means, no.
Could contact the DOT when they're issued a license plate and it's recorded where that primary location is of the vehicle is. The personal operators, we'd be able to tell.
Yeah, we wouldn't.
I'm
We wouldn't be able to know how many are parked, how many park at a terminal, how many park there, and then how often would we need to refresh that list? Would that be on an annual basis, or, that'd be a difficult one to track, I think, from that regard. And I don't know that it's necessarily germane. Let's just say there's 30 semi-truck drivers in Milton. What does that change the narrative? I don't know.
No, not just truck drivers in the city of Milton, residents who own their own business of truck driving in the city of Milton. I mean, working in the fields that I have in the past, I know that there's a boatload of semi companies out there and shipping companies. But as far as the amount of people who are residents, those are the people that I'm talking about.
Not just the business owners, though. You want the drivers too. That's what more of I think I was talking about is the drivers. You want to know how many drivers, kind of allow us to the drivers who park their vehicles away, not just the business owners. I would think.
Yes, we would need to clarify it. Do you want the people that own the business and are drivers?
Or
Or,
all drivers together.
correct. I mean, that's a
think it should be all
big
drivers
difference
together.
of what you're specifying with regard to a proposed ordinance.
Right.
Just curious, does your husband own his own trailer or his own?
No, it's a JB Hunt, so it's a commercial
thought.
vehicle.
Okay,
Yeah,
so that's the situation right there.
yes, yeah,
I think we'd want to focus on all drivers, not just business owners.
right. I have a question. Quick Trip is a truck stop. They did not allow for a lot of parking, but there are parking that is going on there. And my husband was able to park there a few times, but it can't be consistent. The owner said it's liability and things like that, but it's a truck stop. I'm very familiar with truck stops. We stop at a lot of them. Loves, Pilots, Rangers, whatever. Maybe something with Quick Trip needs to look at the possibility of parking semis. Just to let you know.
Thanks. Well,
Just
what's
random
every-
question on that actually. Would you pay to rent a spot there, a parking spot?
Depending on the rent. And if I was a city resident, that would kind of be cumbersome because maybe you could do like dog tags, you charge a lesser rate for, and now, it just, well, and it goes back to the city of Milton.
Okay, so what does the council want to do about the ordinance in front of them? You've read it once.
Actually, I have another question for Al first. If we were to go about like permitting or something like that, where we could just vet the location when they try to apply for a permit, how much hassle would that cause?
I'm not sure. There's a multitude of questions that would come to my mind right away when that idea was floated. Something simple like Woodcrest is a dead end today, but next year it won't be. We've already approved development plans to extend it. You know, so that changes it though. So if it's okay today, but it's not okay 6 months from now, what does that mean for that situation? The neighbors are okay with it today, but what if the house sells and the next neighbor's not okay with it? But I mean, but you have to understand that that's a very realistic possibility. Everybody's okay with it today, but you know, your neighborhood turns over, Woodcrest gets extended, there's 108 apartment units built there next year. You know, the dynamics change, and then what is the mechanism then to revoke that permit? Is there some sort of petition process, or, you know, I mean, it's,
Hopefully my husband will be retired, then we won't have that issue.
You know, what Al mentions is what I noticed when I first read this. There's nothing in the ordinance that says the neighbors don't like trucks parked in their neighborhood. You know, it mentions the visibility, it mentions the damage to the road, and you know, my guess is that really the bigger issue is what do the neighbors think of a truck being parked in their neighborhood? And if you got good neighbors and you're good neighbors, maybe it works out fine. But then that other neighbor comes in and it might not be so good. You know, I'm real sympathetic to you know what you're saying here, and I wish there were a way that we could figure out something, and I think the something would have to somehow include sort of a vetting of where it can be parked. You know, that is probably the issue, that we want it to be parked in a place that's relatively safe. The owners are, or the drivers are going to want it to be parked in a place where it's relatively secure. You know, their concern is that's a valuable piece of property. And so, you know, it starts to get into being a little bit of a hassle to vet that kind of thing and say, okay, we can come up with a permit kind of a framework, but the permit's got to be based on some vetting of where that vehicle can be parked on a regular basis.
I think if you were to go down the road of having a vetting of that, it should be based off of sightlines and things like that. I think that would really be the criteria. Is this a public safety issue or not?
Yeah, obviously we don't want to create a public safety issue. On the other hand, you know, I think there are probably some places in the city that things could be parked that wouldn't create that kind of issue. What would be very good is, you know, if there were a place that you know, we could designate that was available. I don't know that we have that kind of space at this point in time to be able to do that.
The existing ordinance as it reads now gives us the ability to ask a truck to be moved if it is in an unsafe place.
But is it just safety or is it street damage over time? You know, when we talked about it during our last meeting, we talked about you know, the use of roads over time, which is why they're listed as you know, Class B highways or streets that cause damage. They're not built to sustain use of that type of vehicle. And so, you know, we were looking at it in those terms rather than just the visibility around a semi-trailer. And so we had larger concerns than that. So I'm not sure that we look at it just in terms of safety, looking around a semi and trying to get around and making sure we don't hit a child or we don't hit a car coming from the other direction. Although those are great concerns. I don't mean to ignore those as well. But we have to look at making sure that our streets last over time too, and that they are consistent with the needs of all taxpayers.
You know, I don't hear the folks talking about the trailer being there. What I hear them talking about is the tractor being there. And in the case of the trailer, it's there for a short period of time because they were involved in a delivery or whatever. And so, yeah, I don't have any trouble, restricting the trailer parking.
Right.
But the tractor, I think, is a little more subjective in terms of there are other vehicles out there that probably weigh that much or pretty darn close to it that could be causing that damage.
Excuse me, one more question or statement. Take a look at Sunday mornings or Saturday afternoons on St. Mary Street and Parkview Drive. You can't get a vehicle through that because they're not parking. The church parking is not being parked in the parking lots. They're parking along the road. And same with some of the subdivisions with apartments. You've got all these cars that are parked right up to the stop signs. Now that's a hinder for emergency vehicles. I've seen it because I live right on the end of Woodcrest, and you've got that intersection right there, and the way that people fly down Parkview, that's another whole bottle of concern. So standard cars are causing some of this hinder as well.
Should have been here a year ago. We discussed that.
Yes.
And I do agree with the not having the trailer there because the average trailer, I believe I'm right, is somewhere between 52 and 54 feet, correct? 53, right in between it. But, and that's an extra long length there. And that also takes away and precludes several parking spots for residents living on either side of the rig owner. And so I see that, So anyway, I agree with that part of it. And I do want to also say that my idea of supporting the permit, we want to be real clear that we are not responsible for damage done to those vehicles, wherever they're parked. It's important that, the city gave us a permit. That permit is strictly to be able, if it came into play. I'm not assuming liability on behalf of the city.
Allowing us a parking spot.
And then it becomes the owner's responsibility to find a location for the trailer or it would be their responsibility to find a location to leave the trailer for those. I don't know if we come up with a 24-hour limit for parking the tractor part
I
of it.
think you could just follow the same limit we have on RVs when it comes to parking just the tractor portion. Follow the same rule we have for the RVs. That way it's all consistent amongst vehicles. And then just the restricted to no trailers parked on the streets, except for delivery purposes. So then, yeah. So it'd be 48 hours then matching the
It's
RVs.
48, okay.
I don't know what kind of streets are in the commercial areas, but like maybe idea that I brought to Al was to reserve a street where the guys can park their trailers without repercussions. Like if it snows, obviously, we don't have control over the weather. A lot of the local guys, they're only here for 10 hours. They're here for 10 hours and then they're gone. So it would be nice to be able for them to have a street designated for them to park on, to park a trailer on, that they're not gonna get a ticket if it snows even.
We kind of talked about trying to find a designated spot last time. So 2 weeks ago.
It's kind of hard around here. So, you don't have big parking spots around here or parking lots.
We have parking spots for cars. Plenty of those.
Down by Stores Lake, down that way, and.
No, that's what I was thinking is maybe Stores Lake Road, because that's partially commercial, isn't it, after the no truck route? And I was thinking maybe that road might work.
I think that was also brought up 2 weeks ago, but there are some limitations on that road too,
There are.
especially around the Milton house.
Yeah, and then
So-
past that,
Right. And that's
Like
the
if
only-
you were to go up where Frank, what was it, Frank Brothers or whatever's there, from there, what, to the east, it's all commercial, correct? Yeah,
Because yeah, we brought that up 2 weeks ago as an option, but as I said, the biggest issue there is the Milton House and making sure people didn't intentionally drive past the Milton House with
absolutely.
trailers and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, what is the preference of the council?
Has anybody heard anything back from the chamber at all about this? Since we had it published in the paper, any suggestions?
Nope.
Semis do pay wheel tax.
Thank you very much.
Many more.
We actually pay tax on every mile we run
Yeah.
on every road.
Yeah.
So how could we amend this proposed ordinance then maybe to have the trailers count kind of as the same as RVs, where they have the same kind of rules with 48 hours parking like that, just for the trailers or for the tractors, and then we restrict trailer parking.
Yeah, I mean, we could do that. I think Mark and Howie and Scott and I would probably need to try to figure out where that would be in the ordinance. But yeah, I mean, it's doable. Yeah.
Okay. And what are your thoughts on trying to find a place where maybe tractors or the trailers could be parked?
I mean, I think it's a lot of the same concerns that have already been talked about tonight. Where would that be? When that landscape changes, how does that affect it? And you know, one of the issues with the trailers is oftentimes the trailers won't be licensed to the owner. So the idea of restricting it only to Milton residents would be difficult to do.
I would agree.
You know, but I mean, if that's not a concern, then it's all doable.
And I think I would like to make the motion that we modify this ordinance to basically do as I said, modify or to show the tractors as being able to park for 48 hours, similar, basically the same as RVs, and then restricting the trailers. And we'll leave it at that for now. And if it becomes an issue with the trailers, we can try to resolve that later.
Second,
Mark, do you have any comment?
The provisions that are requested certainly can be incorporated into the various sections that are contained in proposed ordinance 469. That I can certainly do. And certainly based on some comments here, I can see at a minimum 7182 introductory should be expanded to cover not only trucks, truck tractors, and tractor semi-trailers, but also RVs and that sort of thing. If in fact they're in excess of 12,000 pounds, that's the same concern as a semi. So when of course when 7154C was created, I don't think it was created or expanded. I think it was expanded with in mind that you would have such large boats or RVs that they'd be in excess of 12,000 pounds, to be honest. So I can certainly do that, but just to note that the mere fact that they're driving semi trucks on Class B roads is a violation. Right? So the fact that, unless they fly to where they're parking, they're...
Class B roads are actually, a truck and tractor can be 80% of their gross weight. That's the definition of a Class B road. So I can be 80,000 pounds, but I can be only 80% of that. That's the actual definition of a Class B road.
I second.
Okay. Well, as of right now, we've got for the Class B roads 12,000 pounds. So I'm not arguing with you, I'm just noting that what the ordinance currently states. So you've got two issues. You've got the issue regarding parking, and that's what this one most directly addresses, although it also addresses the weight issue because of what's been said. So, and I don't, so I can certainly prepare the proposed revisions, but you're still going to be addressing the weight issue and I guess I'll need to look and see in terms of the state statutes which regulate the use of Class B highways. Right now, the only statutory exception on that is if you're making a delivery, then you can make that on a Class B highway. Driving home on a Class B highway is not an exception. So I'd have to look at that, because that's the other thing we're dealing with. It isn't just that they're all tied together here, you know. So if you wanted to go ahead and make the motion, that's fine, because this is basically to approve the second reading with those changes that you're requesting, and it comes back for a third reading.
At that time, when it comes back for the third reading, Mark can then add from his research what may or may not work.
That's a good idea.
I like that.
I see. Oh, I see.
So
Okay.
there's a motion, if I understand, is the intent of your motion to approve the second reading with the modifications?
Correct. Just
Okay.
second reading. And
And
then we're going
then
back to the
you
third
have a
reading.
second for that?
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay. Now, are there any questions or comments about this motion? Okay.
Chief, I'm not, bear with me, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but, here's Larry Lane, he looks out his window, and for a week now, I've seen a RV parked in the same spot for a week straight, and I call your office. And not 'cause I'm an older person, just a citizen. You would go and have a conversation with that individual, right, and deal with the situation.
Yep, typically we pass those on to Blaine Larson, our code enforcement officer. He will research, may use some techniques to see if it stays for an additional 48 hours once we are monitoring it. And then making contact with the owner / operator of that, advise them of the ordinance and that they have to move.
And if it was a large boat, like some of these boats I've seen, these, what I call mini yachts, but they're pretty big, same thing, right?
Same thing.
And if it was in this ordinance happens to get passed, if it did, down the road, you would do the same thing with a tractor. Okay. I knew that was the case, but I wanted people to understand that the enforcement is the same. We're not just picking on owner operators or,
That's kind of what I was trying to get to, is to make it the same for all these vehicles.
And honestly, what brought us here to begin with was a difference of opinion / wondering what the institutional memory was of this particular ordinance, whether it included trailers or not. And the language is not explicit to that. Some of us thought, oh yeah, it was always supposed to be just tractors. Some of us looked at the language and said, then why doesn't it say that? So refining some of these words so that 50 years from now, there's a common understanding of exactly what they mean is kind of why we're here. If you allow tractors to park in front of residences, that's what the language says today. So just want to clear that
it
up
says
for you.
trucks.
It says trucks. Yeah.
Which is well, there's a defined, truck tractors is a defined term in the state statutes that's incorporated, so that's why I suggested to put that in there, because that's what a semi-truck is in the state statute. It's a truck tractor, not a truck like your 3500. That's a truck.
And that's the other piece of this, is this ordinance as proposed repeals section 7183B, which gives that exception to allow a truck, as it
Right.
currently states, to be parked in front of the owner's home. The ordinance as proposed repeals that, because that's kind of how we got into this. We had a situation in which an individual was parking their semi and trailer not in front of their home. But it was interpreted at first of, well, it's around the corner from their home, so is that in front? There's a lot of layers to this onion. And again, I agree completely with what Chief Marquardt's saying. It was a matter of trying to shore up the language to get to what the intent we believed was always there, is that there shouldn't be semis in residential neighborhoods.
So barring then this whole weight issue in Class B roads, would this help clarify some of the wording of this?
Yes.
Anything else on the motion that you have before you?
And the motion includes second reading and this is just
One reading.
So
Second reading.
the motion is to approve the second reading with the modifications of showing that the tractor is able to park for 48 hours, similar to RVs, and restricting parking for the trailers. Correct?
I just have one thing clarified.
Yes.
What is the actual weight limit then on the city streets?
As of right now, or?
Yes, as of today.
As of today, okay.
I think on the truck routes, it's Class B.
Correct.
Yeah. And on the other ones, the residentials is 12,000.
12,000.
Yeah.
Okay. So the attorney is right as far as a weight limit is being exceeded there, because like I said, an average truck is gonna weigh about 20,000 pounds. So obviously that's probably gonna be an issue. I very rarely bring my truck home anymore. I have a parking space in Milton, or not in Milton, in Janesville that I drive to. And I also rent a small shop. So I very rarely bring my truck home, but I would always like to have the option to, in case I was coming by and wanted to pick up one of my kids, put the car seat in there and take her for a ride or so, or pick up a permit that I need to print off. I still would like to have that option without any repercussions.
Thanks. Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Anything else for anybody? All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, so that motion carries, and just so you know, there's going to be, in 2 weeks, a third vote on this. And it could change, okay? So just to be prepared and to watch for the meeting notices, and if you have any questions or something that comes up before then, call Al.
You said 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
September 17th.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you, and thank you everyone for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so discussion and possible action to deny an operator license for Adam Jagodinski.
So this is a denial for Adam based on a background check from the Milton Police Department and the City Clerk's Office. And they are recommending denial. On August 22nd, Mr. Jagodowski received a letter, and from what I understand, he has not contacted us. Jagodzinski.
I'll make the motion to deny operator license for Adam Jadinsky.
There's a motion and a second. Any questions or anything for anybody? All those in
I
favor?
just want- Madam Mayor, I'm sorry. I wasn't fast enough. I apologize.
We need to read why it's being
Oh,
denied.
okay.
Oh,
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's the purpose of having so that can be a record as to why it's being denied, because that will be conveyed then in writing to the individual. Okay?
you can do that first. And then
Is it just based on the recommendation? Or do you?
No, the specific reason, right?
Okay.
Well, It could be based upon the written recommendation, that's fine, as long as it refers to a reason for it, that's what we need.
The recommendation as written in the memo doesn't outline the rationale, it just says recommending denial. Yeah, so in this specific situation, it was found that Adam had 3 OWI convictions.
Within that.
Yeah, that's what I thought. There's a letter that was attached with the memo.
Yes.
That gives a basis.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Based on that.
Based on the letter, okay, yep, that works, yeah.
So did you want to amend your motion?
I'll have to say it's based on the letter that was attached, or,
That included 3 OWIs.
yeah.
Yep, okay.
I do want to point out that 2 of those are outside of the 5-year window we typically look at. One was, and when there is one, the clerk and I have the ability to use discretion on whether or not to grant.
That was my question.
So the other 2 were outside of that 5 years, but viewing in context as a whole, we did not feel comfortable issuing that license.
Thank you, Chief. That was my question. I'm not questioning your judgment.
So
But
just a sec, so can we finish amending the motion and get it the second, and then we'll have you talk?
So, right now, I have the motion as denying the operator license for Adam based on the letter included with the agenda materials that included 3 OWIs listed. And I have Alderperson Clark seconding with Alderperson Elson motioning. Sound good?
Okay. Larry?
So a portion of this process involves subjective analysis as well. Fair for me to say?
Fair, yeah. I think that is, I think that's exactly right in that we aren't just analyzing what's written on just the application.
That's what I'm comfortable with that, I just wanted to clarify that.
Which is why it comes here. That's
Right.
why it's here for you all to vote on whether or not you approve our recommendation. Because objectively and subjectively, we're requesting the license be denied.
So Chief, I'm gonna play devil's advocate. Larry Lane gets 3 OWIs, but they're all happen to fall outside of the 5-year limitation that we've set, or whatever, or boundary. And I come to you and ask for a license.
If you have 0 drug or alcohol convictions within the 5 years prior to the application, there is no provision that enables us to deny that application. If you have 1, then we start discussing it. And typically 1 isn't a denial, but when you have 1 and that 1 is a 3rd offense, that is what raised the question for us.
I understand. And we're doing that fairly, I mean, as fairly as possible, right?
Yeah, I feel that we are. We don't bring many denials to you.
I know.
So, you know, we do our best to use really good judgment when we do that.
I hope you didn't mind me asking.
Not a bit.
Anything else for anybody? Okay, all those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Discussion and possible action regarding updated assessor contract.
So Dan has prepared a memo in here to update our assessor's contract. Currently, the assessor, the city of Milton entered into a contract with Musser Appraisals in 2016. That contract was a 5-year contract to run from 17 to 21. In discussions with Musser Appraiser, they have agreed to extend their contract 1 additional year to 2022, which would allow us to do a market update revaluation in 2020 and spread that cost out over 3 years. So the cost for the contract extension is cost neutral, but extends it out for an additional year at the end.
How often have we done this in the past?
Which aspect?
The revaluation, the market update revaluation.
A market update revaluation is different than what we did 2 years ago, which was a full valuation. Prior to that, a market update analysis probably hadn't been done in.
I think our contract with Accurate called for it every other year. Whether we actually received a true market correction every other year is up for debate.
Ideally, you do this every 2 to 3 years.
Our goal is to try to keep that assessment ratio as close to 100% as possible, because that means the distribution of taxes is constantly being looked at to make sure everyone's paying their fair share, not a penny more or less.
I understand.
Yeah, it's the assessment ratio that's really the litmus test to kind of see when things kind of get out of whack. We were at 98.5 last year, and we're already down to 92 this year, which means that, and as anybody who's either tried to sell a home or buy a home in the city of Milton over the last 18 months has experienced, costs are only going one way, and that's up. Yeah.
I think it's real important that I like what you just said, Dan, and I think it's real important now too, that we communicate that clearly to the public, because I don't think the average person understands. They just see this in the paper and think, oh, they're gonna raise my taxes.
Right. Every time there is a revaluation, it is tax neutral. There is no more taxes collected than there was prior. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, the tax rate is the tax rate. It doesn't change anything.
Yeah, it's just the distribution. Like when we did the reval last year, the difference in what people experienced in their 2017 versus their 2018 tax bills, 50% of the bills went up and 50% of them went down.
Right. We didn't get any calls from that 50% that went down. Not a single one. Not a single one. Nobody came in high-fiving or asking what they did right. Yeah, no.
The difference we'll see on this market revaluation compared to the last one, it was there were a lot more outliers in the last one. I anticipate more properties are going to be much closer to whatever the average increase is. I don't see as many outliers as there were last time.
I'll move that we enter into reevaluation maintenance contract with Musser for 2020 to 2022 and cancel the remaining 2 years of their existing contract.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries. Discussion and direction regarding city engineering services.
So, as indicated in the memo, as part of the regular budget process, we review a variety of things, pretty much top to bottom. On year-to-year costs, trends, contracts like we just did with the assessor. We talked about the attorney's contract a couple years ago. And one of those things that we have been kind of tracking for some time is the engineering services contract that we have with Baxter and Woodman. And as I indicate in the memo, the city has a tremendous working relationship with Baxter and Woodman, has no issues whatsoever with their work performance, their professionalism, their responsiveness. We really like Mark. But
on most days,
as part of doing our due diligence, we have started to review that and have talked internally and with Mark for as a matter of transparency, if it's time to maybe take a deeper dive into those engineering services. And I outlined 4 potential options in the memo, but we're certainly not limited to those options. And one of those options is to just carry on. But wanted to kind of introduce the concept to the council at tonight's meeting, see if you had any questions, comments, feedback. Mark knew that this was on the agenda and that this was going to be discussed and wanted to be here tonight. So I just not necessarily looking for any any motion or action, but just, you know, kind of any feedback you have on this matter. Up to and including hiring an in-house engineer, bringing somebody in-house. What we've seen is that the amount of hours being charged to Baxter and Woodman continues to increase, and that's a direct correlation to the amount of development activity and work what we've done in the city. It doesn't appear as though that trend is going to go the other way, even with the likely impending recession. The amount of hours being attributed to Baxter and Woodman are far beyond a full-time employee, one full-time employee. So even if we were to go in-house, we would still retain some level of outside engineering, hopefully with Baxter and Woodman. Or we can continue to work with Baxter and Woodman and go on a year-to-year basis, or we could go to RFP, which we haven't done at least in the 5 years I've been here. And Inga didn't recall in her 12 years. Mark said that he thought maybe something happened 10 years ago, but couldn't recall. So, you know, that's always an option as well. RFPs are difficult, they're time consuming, and they are often, I did not say that. I think it's a catchy buzzword for folks who don't have to respond to RFPs and folks who don't have to read RFPs, but they're subjective. So, not saying that we shouldn't do it, but.
Just a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
How many hours a week or hours a month are we charging, or is Baxter Woodman charging us these days for engineering services?
I think we would have to look at that closer, but we know that it's over 2080 on an annual basis, which would be a full-time employee.
Okay, I was just curious.
And do you, you know, when you think about it, do you envision a cost savings if you would hire an in-house?
Yeah, we wouldn't do it if it wasn't a cost savings, yeah, irrespective of the option.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be a cost savings if we hired an in-house engineer? We'd have to review it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's likely yes, but with that comes, you know, who is that person? Can he or she do all the wonderful things that Mark Langer does?
Can we just hire him?
That
Can we
was
just
my-
hire Mark Langer?
I think that what the staff is asking is, what is your consensus on, do you want them to look into this more? Because you have a lot of questions that I think they would like to find out too.
I think that.
I
Yeah.
don't want to spend a whole bunch of time. I guess that's a better way to cut to the chase. To be honest, we didn't want to spend a bunch of time doing a bunch of analysis and research, calling other communities, looking at, you know, the last 5 years of trends. If the idea from the council was, you know, so that's why we put this on the agenda tonight.
Here's my thought too, a devil's advocate. I think I'd like to know the advantage, disadvantage of in-house versus outside. In terms of, I sometimes like to have that give and take, the yin and yang going on, that happens when you contract with an outside agent. So it's just something to think about too. Is that an advantage for the city to have a person like Mark or another like Mark or another engineering firm that has no vested interest in city takes and things like that? Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. Mark owns property in the city.
Well, no, I know.
That's it, you're done, you are just done.
But I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No.
Mark.
And like I said, again, we can put pen to paper
Yeah.
with a level of analysis, but I don't foresee any situation, frankly, and I'm saying this right now on September 3rd of 2019, this may change 2 years from now, 3 years from now. If the second Great Recession happens, maybe this isn't the case, but I think it's highly unlikely that there would be any situation in which we didn't have some level of contract engineering, even if we did go in-house, simply because of the sheer volume of work and the abilities of one individual versus a large firm. I mean, Mark is an expert in many, many areas, but not all areas. You know, Inga does GIS. Could she pick up more GIS? You know, things like that. We'd have to look at those types of things. And we're fortunate to have that ability.
I guess that was the point that I was going to make, that we're not hiring Mark, we're hiring
Right.
a firm.
Yeah.
And the firm is
Yes.
bringing with it additional expertise that Mark can draw on our behalf, which we wouldn't have with the in-house person. So I think what it calls for is probably a more detailed analysis over time. I'd be real comfortable with continuing on the year-to-year basis right now with the idea that we start to chart some of that stuff.
I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to get more analysis on that. I think we can kind of ignore the RFP part, the first option on here. But I think looking at maybe it's analysis on some of the other stuff, looking at having our own in-house versus not. And if it sounds like if we were to have our own in-house, we still also contract with another company. I mean, that still gives you a lot of resources outside of just having our own in-house person. And I hate to really say it, but you could always go back to having it and contracted only engineer at some point too.
Okay,
I think that's, yeah,
that gives you enough direction?
I think it does, yeah.
Okay, all right, then, item number 12, discussion and possible action regarding council policy ad hoc committee work plan.
So we put this on the agenda based on Alderperson Lane's request at the last meeting regarding the potential investigation of aldermanic wards within the community as opposed to at-large elections. In discussing that with the mayor, we thought the policy ad hoc committee would be the appropriate location as, you know, to start that discussion, as the 7 of you up here would be directly affected by if any change was to be made. So that was kind of the rationale that we had for putting that on here. So I guess the question that we had is this something that the council would like to send to the council policy ad hoc committee? And is there anything else, looking ahead maybe for 2020?
Actually, since we do have the engineering services on the agenda for tonight, I thought that we were going to be taking a look at our inspection services.
this
So
is
that
just-
would be something that the ad hoc committee maybe could look at.
I don't think so. I don't think the ad hoc committee would look at inspection services.
What in terms of inspection services? You mean like code enforcement or
Right.
building inspections? Because we just,
Residential, we've talked about that a couple of times, about whether or not we need to hire somebody outside or if we want to continue to have Howie do those.
so in terms of building inspections, we already have contracted those out. Yeah. Not for residential, no, just for commercial, yeah. So, yeah, I think I would, similar to the discussion we just had about engineering, if that's something we wanted to do, I think we would want to start that process internally first. That would be a lot for any outside entity to digest without us kind of setting the table, poor vernacular, but without providing appropriate information.
That's something that probably would go in front of the CDA instead too, wouldn't it?
Potentially, yeah. And then it comes down to, again, I'm still not sure if we're talking about code enforcement or residential building inspections. If somebody wants to build a deck or add on to their bathroom or garage, that's a residential building inspection, how he currently does that. If we're talking about code enforcement, then that falls under the police department's and Howie's jurisdiction. So we already have an individual who's does that as their job in Blaine Larson, and then Howie provides, you know, kind of the background and administrative support for that. So there's really two different things there.
The ad hoc committee could look at different council policies or any reviews of anything along that sort of line.
I think that anything on that planning that we did a couple of years ago, or last year, I can't remember now, time flies, but, Al, that, and Madam Mayor, that we haven't addressed, they might also include on their list of things to look at.
Sure.
You know, when we did our long-range planning,
Oh, you mean the goal setting?
the goal
Yeah,
setting,
okay, got it.
thank you.
Yep.
I mean, I think there was a couple other things, they don't come
Yep.
to mind right
I'll
now.
pull that back out.
But I'd be I'm very excited about having that committee look at those sort of things, so.
Okay, so if there's anything that you think of, obviously you can email Al or I, if you can think of anything right off the top of your head right now, but Okay,
So do we have direction that they're gonna look at the aldermanic wards?
yes.
Okay, I did.
That and review anything else.
Okay,
And I think part of that aldermanic words was also a thought of, term limits, if we want to look at that.
term limits, yep, that's what
Yeah.
Inga was just mentioning to me, yeah.
Okay,
Whether if we want to do wards
Yeah.
and if there's a term limit, right?
yeah, it's like, yeah, so research,
Do we wanna impose term limits on elected officials and or committee members, if I understand it correctly?
Yep.
And do we want to change the structure of the council to be either only aldermanic wards, only at large, or some combination of the two?
Many cities are doing the combination, several at large, several.
and maybe compares, I guess it would be similar sized cities.
Yeah.
So we know that we're not gonna, like, obviously the city of Madison isn't,
And the pros
Yes.
and cons.
Right.
yeah, yeah.
I really like to appreciate that outside perspective.
Okay, all right. So we're good on that.
How's that sound, Maxine? Our lone representative from the council policy ad hoc committee.
We're putting you to work.
I'm on that too.
You're paid to be on it.
Do we have to do a motion?
Yeah, do you need a motion for that? Yeah, I think it's really up to you.
Or up to Mark. If he wants to-
Mark, do you want a motion or is that direction good enough?
Direction is fine, you're not really taking any official action. You're not taking any official action, so that's fine.
Okay, all right. Thank you, everyone. Item number 13, discussion and possible action regarding 2020 budget schedule.
Yes, it is September 3rd, so we are talking budget schedule. Dan has presented 4 options here. They all have similarities to them, but all have differences as well, which I guess is the reason there's 4 of them. And really, it comes down to how many special meetings do you want? Do you want any special meetings? If you don't want any special meetings, then option number 4 is for you. If you want multiple special meetings, then option number 2 is for you. And then there's always that difficulty with, do we want to take action on something the week of Thanksgiving? Last year we did, the year before that we did not. I think everybody's always kind of felt like holding a public hearing the week of Thanksgiving is not a good idea, so we didn't even present that as an option this time, I don't think. Because that's really where you want to get the input from people, but the adoption, I think last year, Thanksgiving was as late as it could possibly be. So we adopted it the week of Thanksgiving. This year, it's about as early as it could possibly be. So we have some that are a little bit mix of both. And as always, every year, just because we pick option 1, 2, 3, or 4 doesn't mean that we can't audible it at some point as information comes in. We do know that we do need to approve the budget for publication on October 15th. That is consistent throughout all 4 options. As you may recall, just because you approve the budget for adoption does not mean that that is the budget that is approved. We just, by state statutes, need to approve a budget for publication in the Courier. It would go in the Courier then the 23rd or 24th of October. And then the budget can change, and it will change after that because there are still some variables that will trickle in beyond that October 15th date. So it really comes down to when would you want to have the public hearing and when would you want to adopt? And we have a very late option in option 4 with adoption, formal adoption on December 3rd. But if I remember correctly, last year, that's the option we chose as well, and then called an audible and decided to adopt it the week of Thanksgiving because we pretty much had it set at that point.
Boy, I really like option 1.
Does that work?
But are we gonna have all the information by then?
Well,
I think we have all
staff.
the information by then, yeah.
It's always usually pretty getting kind
That's
of
the
close.
that's the early one.
The
When is Thanksgiving?
28th.
Oh, it's the 28th.
Oh, did I said
Yeah,
it backwards.
yeah.
It was as early as possible last year. This year it's as late as possible. So you gotta really squeeze in your Christmas
And the
shopping.
dates that are super important are really just
you're off the
when
list if we get that.
when we're gonna have the public hearing. Because then everything after that is up to, it can change, but the public hearing date can't. Once we,
Yes, once we set it, it cannot change.
so,
Does that work for option 1, Dan and everybody, or does that?
yeah, I mean, if we feel like if we feel like we aren't ready to adopt on the 19th, we can always change that. The public hearing can be whenever. The state statutes just say I have to have the public hearing 15 days after publication. And so this is just a product of math. I mean, we could have the public hearing on the 19th or the 12th or any day after November 7th.
When are you gonna be gone, Linda?
I was thinking option one would work out very well for me.
I'm afraid of waiting to formally approve it until December 3rd because of the need to get it out as soon as possible to the residents.
It is always a challenge.
I agree with, I think it's kind of rough to wait till that long, but I'm kind of afraid if we wait till that, do it that early, that we're not gonna have information until right before the end. So, in the past, that we wanted some time to discuss after that.
And option 1 and 2 are essentially the same, just a different day of approving the budget.
Yeah,
Right.
as opposed
So-
to approving it at our regular meeting, we could wait a week. And then, like we put in there, if we went with option 2, we would likely just cancel the meeting on the 19th, because what would be?
And you don't even really have to make a decision today. We don't really have to make a decision on any of this until October 15th, but I know that there's scheduling conflicts and things of that nature, so I just wanted to at least get the discussion going.
I like option 1, and if we needed to, we could add a meeting on the 26th if we didn't have. So, my goal is we get it done as quickly as we can unless there's a good reason for it to go later. So if we go with option 1, and we find out that we're missing something, we call a meeting on the 26th.
Right, yeah.
I think I actually will be out of town for the 12th. Yeah, turnover of my project in Dubai is on the 13th, so I might be out of town that week.
So you'll have to call in.
Usually, what is it, that middle meeting, the 12th would be when we had public groups come in to, present their
Could we have that
reasons
come
for.
in October?
I think the last time we had them come in on a separate night altogether for
think-
these three.
I think based on the policy, it's the second meeting in October
I was trying to look it up.
is when
sounds right.
the nonprofit groups present. I'd have to double
So
check
it wouldn't
it.
necessarily be
Correct.
No,
one of
I,
these
Right.
meetings.
no, I think it's that second meeting in October that they present. I'd wanna double check the policy that was approved last year, early this year, but.
If that's the case, then it'd be the day that we approve the publication, but it doesn't really matter.
So Ryan, you would miss the public hearing.
Yeah, which is one of the parts I'd actually like to be here for if possible. I like option number 3, in a way. Push the public hearing. Then it's on a regular council night, the public hearing is, so it's not anything out of the ordinary in that regards. And then we just come in for a special meeting to formally pass it afterwards. So it keeps things regular for, the public who might attend, but it gives us a special meeting for finalizing things.
Are you not baking on that week?
I won't be here that week.
Yeah, you can tell men.
I don't mean I have to be here, right? A little bit, I'm not thinking more, that's all you mean. I don't have to be.
That's fine.
Otherwise, it's the last minute.
Well, we'll plan on approving the budget for publication on October 15th, and we can revisit that, this discussion at that time. We'll have more information, even on October 15th, we'll have more information. We won't have complete information, but,
Okay. Sounds good.
we,
Whatever works. As long as we have a majority here, that's all that matters.
We'll just put the same memo in here on October 15th.
That's fine.
Got 6 weeks.
So do we need a motion for?
No,
no.
All right, we're to general items. Committee meetings, committee reports. Who's got one?
Historic preservation is tomorrow.
That's right. Yeah. What else is tomorrow? Library is tomorrow too.
Does she have an update now?
Yeah, CDA met last week Monday, and forwarded a recommendation to the I guess the Common Council to install 3 new Welcome to Milton signs, one on Parkview Drive, one on John Paul, and replacing the existing one on North Clear Lake. They approved a design that was created, and then at this point, we're working with the county to secure a location along John Paul, and then formalizing a location along Parkview. Once we have kind of those 2 items set, we'll bring forth the proposal to council so they can see the design that was recommended and see the locations that were recommended, and then hopefully authorize the purchase of those signs.
Any other committee reports? Okay, if not, we'll move to staff reports. Howie?
They started the Veterans Pavilion today up at Hilltop. And otherwise, over on Front Street, Mark, they're gonna try to finish the sewer this week. And then next week, probably get some of the gravel and maybe curb put in, or maybe, yeah. Yeah. And then Windsor would be next week after that, so.
Okay. Dan, anything?
Nope, just waiting on numbers from the state and stuff like that to actually put together a budget that isn't all guesstimates.
Okay. Chief?
First day of school today. Hopefully, people read my article in the Courier last week. We saw a lot of patience out there today, at least no yelling and swearing that I heard on the street when I was out patrolling. It's just that annual reminder that traffic patterns are changing, children being out on the street at times that they haven't been all summer, so please slow down and pay attention.
And I really want to thank all of the police. There were a lot of people, or policemen patrolling, and I had to be out during a lot of that time. And there were just, I think it did have an impact on the people that were out driving and helping the students. And so, thank you.
Ashley?
We had a successful food truck rally last Sunday, so thanks to everybody who came out for that. And then yesterday we had a successful library lope. We had about 66 participants, raised about $1,400 for the library and teen services, so good weather for both of them. We were very lucky.
Inga?
So we started doing a podcast recently, and we have 1 episode done. It's called We Are Milton. We're established now on Spotify and Google Podcasts, and we're still working on Apple Podcasts. We'll also have them available on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and everything as well.
So if you have any suggestions for topics, please let us know. They are fun to do, but we want to make sure that they are valuable. So if you have any kind of topics or you hear folks talk about out in the community, what's this or what's that, the goal of the podcast is to be informative, not just witty banter and entertainment, you know. So yeah, if you have any ideas, let us know. Because I like to talk. So mine was 28 minutes. Carrie Club's was 7.
Are we editing yours? How long is the podcast? Is there no set time?
My goal was to keep it around 20 minutes because according to the United States Census, the mean commute time to work for City of Milton residents is 21.5 minutes. So if we keep it to about 20, then people can use it while they're commuting to work, get some information about the city. Unfortunately, the first one was 38 minutes. So thanks to Al and all of his knowledge about TIF districts.
So I assume you have other special guests like Howie and Dan on there as well. So Dan's Financial Corner.
We're all gonna have to come up with MC names though.
Yeah.
Howie looks real
Yeah.
interested in doing that.
Code enforcement by Howie.
Oh, 101.8.
So is that gonna be our team building for the day? Coming up with different ideas.
MC Hewlett.
Yeah.
I went to the Chief Executive Officer Conference in Elkhart Lake, put on by the League of Municipalities, and they had a lot of great ideas, of course, as they always do. And I know how Al loves it when I come back with a lot of new ideas that he's already probably thought of 2 years ago and decided they were dumb. But so it was really great, and I hope all of you try to make it to 1 or 2 days or however many you can for the conference in October, because I think you will learn a lot. And I feel like the league just keeps doing a better job year after year with these conferences, and they've just been so helpful. So now, team building. I was going to do something really fun, but Ryan requested we come up with ideas for podcasts.
I'll take your fun idea instead.
Well, actually, it's really self-serving because I have a topic suggestion. So, I know that there are some young couples that have moved to Milton and actually are, commuting to different places. So I thought it might be fun to try and get some of those new residents that are moving in to tell us, why Milton? Why millennials want to live in Milton? So that's my suggestion for a podcast. And I think we're open to anything for a podcast, right?
Pacer system with Howie.
I think, here's some simple things to spruce up the outside of your home, or to improve the outside appearance.
Landscaping one.
No, because like in your neighborhood, how to make your neighborhood shine, kind of ideas,
If you have any topics for the library podcast, you can send them our way too. We're struggling too.
But if you have any the other way around, they'll happily take one right now.
It is our equipment, yeah.
Well, it's a power play by the librarian.
No, this is what we're gonna do. We are going to have a topic that we both discuss, and then we're gonna vote on who discussed that topic better. Library or City Hall?
Oh, my favorite books, right?
Both have to be the same topic together, and means of communication.
Yeah, it doesn't sound as fun.
I don't know whether this is a topic for a podcast or some other kind of outlet, but one of the things that worked for Ethel and I in terms of Milton was this was a place where you could have a small business, have very affordable costs, have good access to O'Hare Airport, go anywhere and essentially do anything. And I think that's a competitive advantage. So something that really sells the idea of this is a great place for a telecommuter. This is a great place for somebody that has a small business where they don't have to be at a particular location 5 days a week. And I don't know whether that's a brochure or whether that's something that we advertise some other way, but I think that's a topic that we need to touch on.
I think we should interview Bill Wilson on why he thinks Milton's a great place to be.
Oh, yeah. We should have a wide range of ages.
I'll probably beat the 28 minutes.
So you'll do a 3-parter?
Speed podcasting.
Perhaps interviewing millennials about, talking about having dog parks and ballparks and playgrounds and so forth. Is there anything that they wish we had that we don't have, to engage them socially or?
Producer. We'll be having our own radio station soon in the city of Milton.
How about if one of our topics is our trails, be it hiking and biking trails? Because I still see a lot of bikers coming through Milton, and of course, fall time, a lot of people are still out there trying to get outside. We do have a lot of very nice places on our trail that we could highlight. And then you could also incorporate maybe something having to do with walking to school, the benefits of exercise before school, and why people should carpool instead of line up with one person being picked up at a time in front of our schools.
And if you're afraid for your children, Linda will pick you up and walk with you.
So it's Linda's school time suggestions.
I guess why Milton's better than Janesville? I don't know.
There goes our shared services agreement, Jerry.
For, it's a great place to age in place, I guess. That's what I'm thinking. No, it is. I'm struck by
I'm
that.
just trying to figure out what the alternative is.
The front porch of Milton. We have to have a set.
It's Larry and Bill's stories of Milton.
Or the garages. There's a lot of souped up
Yes,
garages
yeah.
around here.
Stupid. They're stupid. Stooping. They're on their stoop.
Oh, stooping!
Can you please edit this again? Have the ad hoc committee look at that.
I was gonna go and drag his chair back to his house.
Don't have a porch,
And
you
there's
got
another
a
guess.
stoop. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good one too.
Anybody else want to contribute? Chief, anything?
I'm a huge podcast listener, and I have a lot of true crime stuff. in my podcast queue list, and I'm wondering maybe like unsolved cases or something every now and then.
Yes, especially in October. Yeah.
I was hearing when I was in Dubai that they have a channel that every like once a week they do a like an unsolved mystery type thing on a local channel in Dubai. They do something like that, and it gets huge audience viewership.
I don't think I can pull off once a week. Maybe
I
not
know,
even
but that's
once
also a
a
big
month.
city. But I'm just saying that
Yeah,
you know.
but I got
that's a good idea.
I got some ideas that, you know, to get some more ears listening to some of the stuff that we're looking to.
We are only, I'm only planning right now every other week. Because I'm also trying to do a video version, so it's a little bit more time consuming to edit. But Ashley, they're doing once a week, so they could probably use some more stuff too.
Howie, do you want
But
like leaf
Scott, save the
collection
best
or
ones for me.
something?
You could do, I'll just tell you, you could do code enforcement, you could label it, no, I'm not making it up, you really can't do that. So,
And the third Wednesday of the month is not the first Wednesday of the month.
Council violations.
When I moved to town, you'd look at the police report in the Courier, and it was full of unsafe backing. That was one of, so whatever happened to unsafe backing would be.
I think we should have some type of sewer viewership with, sewer review with Mark. Yeah, that's right. Sewer tours with Mark.
Which street is it? Televising video coming in. What street are we in?
Terry. Before. Mark? Yeah.
Can't all be funny.
Or can they? Clearly an hour and a half is way too long for you guys to be in the same room. And we'll be revising the council policies for team building.
Well, here are the council expectations.
On that note.
On that note. Maxine, any recommendations? No? Courier? Yep.
That might be a library.
I do also have a serious one actually. If you had one in regards to ways you can get involved in the city.
Fun ways, fun and exciting ways to
But
get
also,
involved
you
in
know,
the city.
yeah, but also you mention different committees and stuff like that.
Especially now that they're all going through their work plans. And we know what they're gonna be up to. Okay, is there, let's see what else. Next meeting, September 17th. And is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? All those opposed?